Welcome to Grafana Masterclass. So this is presented as part of Monitorama Summer Course Series. And Lesson 1, who am I? So my name is Torkel Ödegaard. And I look like this. At least after 2 years working on open source from home. You kind of end up looking like this. It also sort of shows some symptoms of sort of Stockholm hipster syndrome. So, which you end up sort of with an outgrowth on your head in the form of a hat in the sort of later stages. I'm not sure, are there any hipsters here in Portland? I love this saying, I'm not sure if you heard it, Portland is where young people go to retire. Makes me want to move to Portland and retire. Maybe open a brewery. The city could need one more. Lesson 2, what is Grafana? So, if you don't know, Grafana is an open source project. It's a dashboard tool for visualizing time series. You build these dashboards composed of different types of panels, mainly a graph panel, or that's a very feature-rich panel. It's about 2 years old, very easy to start using, and it's all about time series visualizations. And I created it sort of originally for application monitoring, and the main use cases for people here, I guess, and the main use cases people use Grafana for is infrastructure monitoring and application metrics. But yeah, still that's only about 60% of the Grafana users, because it's used in so many other sectors as well, as sort of home automation, Internet of Things. Just a couple of weeks ago, I talked to an agricultural researcher who put sensors in the soil to visualize sort of soil health using Grafana, which is kind of cool. It originally started just supporting graphite, but sort of over time, more and more sort of data sources has been added through a plugin system, and this is just sort of a couple of them. There are many more. But just let's sort of back up a bit and just want to tell you how special Monitorama is for me. Because I was here 2 years ago presenting at a stage where Grafana was only about 4 months old. And it had, during that time, very quickly gained a very passionate and users that really loved Grafana. And even though there existed a number of alternative dashboards for graphite, Grafana just took off. And Jason invited me to talk here, and the love and feedback and encouragement that I received 2 years ago was just so amazing, and it really solidified my sort of plan to work on Grafana full time and sort of quit my job and do that, which I did, and I now sort of worked on Grafana full time for 2 years. And in that time, we have sort of done a couple of major releases for Grafana. We had a tremendous sort of growth in the project, in the number of really cool users we have. Just amazing sort of the level, the scope, and the coolness of all the companies that are using Grafana. And especially last December, when the first time the SpaceX launched and landed their Falcon 9 rocket, in their promotional video, you could sort of spot Grafana being used, which was just sort of blew my mind a little bit. That sort of one of the most sort of inspirational companies around is using Grafana. And that kind of also inspired us, or inspired the design for our latest poster. So yeah, which is pretty amazing. So yeah, I've been working full time on open source, which kind of reminds me of this comic strip. So how do you think open source apps are maintained, and how they are really maintained? Just one more ticket. So when you work on open source, it can be really addictive and obsessive. But luckily, I met a couple of awesome guys in New York 1.5 years ago, and we decided to start this company, Raintank. And Raintank has really sort of done so much work for Grafana allowing me to work full-time, allowing me to sort of hire some great people in Stockholm. And while it might not be like this, it's more like this. You have lots of hangouts and talk with other people that way. And lately we had an awesome addition to our sort of daily stand-ups and weekly meetings in the form of Hugh Laurie or Jason Dixon. It's going to be awesome to get the chance to work with you. Enough slides. That's not why I'm here. I want to demo and show off some cool Grafana dashboards. So let's start. That looks better. The resolution on this projector isn't the best, so it might be tricky to read some of the text. But if you're not familiar with Grafana, you build these dashboards composed of rows, and in these rows you add panels. So if I add a new graph panel to this row, it will sort of enter full screen edit mode and I'll get thrown into the metrics tab. So let's just pick a graph here. You get thrown into the metrics tab, and the metrics tab right now looks the way it looks because this is using a graphite data source. And here I have the metric key and a bunch of transformations that are being done on this metric request. But if I change the data source to something like Elasticsearch, I get a completely different sort of query editor that exposes all the query features in Elasticsearch. And there's a sort of dashboard picker. This is just sort of, if you're not familiar with Grafana, you can also add a bunch of sort of data sources in the data sources sort of admin view. A couple of things that I kind of wanted to highlight in this dashboard as well is snapshotting. And if you sort of have zoomed into a specific issue that you can maybe want to sort of store exactly this view for posterity or share it with an external client, you can use a feature called snapshots. And snapshots will just sort of store everything that you see, all the metrics in all the panels, and sort of embed that into a separate copy of the dashboard that includes that data, which will sort of look the same for eternity. And it's also something that you can then sort of publish to an external Grafana site or something that you can then share with another user. And these snapshots are also sort of something you can sort of then go back to a couple of weeks or a year from now, and the data will look the same. So that's a kind of neat feature that many don't know about. Another feature that might sort of not be super apparent is the feature that Grafana can actually render all the panels to a PNG image. If this works, that is. I usually develop on a so not on a Mac, on a Linux. So it's I blame Mac. This is all running sort of in Docker. Okay, so you get an image. It's super useful for if you sort of want to have automation around Grafana that sort of builds reports into PDFs. If you have a Hubot or chat integration, you can sort of then render these any panel to a PNG and share on Slack. Now, I have a lot of dashboards to show. So if I'm going to go through these quite quickly because I'm sure you have lots of questions as well. And also, I just want to highlight a few features that are core to Grafana, but also maybe are not super intuitive or super you might not be aware of them. Another sort of small thing is that Grafana can do logarithmic scales. This was something that, to me, I just didn't know what the use case was because, from a developer's perspective, it's a logarithmic scale sounds like something that sort of data scientists, or if you have very sort of exponential curves that you might want to use logarithmic scales. But it is actually super useful for latency data, where you have sort of extremely high variation or orders of magnitude differences, and also in sort of data storage and memory. And yeah, the scales you can just select both for left and y-axis. So let's see, back to the home dashboard. So on that fact, you can actually now in Grafana, in the latest Grafana release, you can actually modify, or in 3.0, you can actually modify which dashboard is your home dashboard. So in this case, I've actually specified Monitorama as my home dashboard. And this is something you can do either on the user profile, set your home dashboard and UI theme. And this is also something you can do as a sort of set defaults on the organization level. So back to more demos. This is just a minor feature that could be useful if you have sort of a min-max, an average, and you can sort of visualize that using a feature called fill below to. And this is also sort of, the reason I talk about this is that in the display options, you can actually have specific display options for specific series. So in this case, I'm saying sort of that the max series shouldn't draw any lines, and you should fill below to the min series. And then I sort of disable lines on the min series as well. And these sort of series-specific options allow you to do sort of, I can say I want to have points as well for the max series, and just that series will gonna sort of be rendered using points. So yeah, you can create exactly the kind of graph you want to do. So that's why I showcased that feature. Let's move back to the start. Time range override. So this is also sort of a feature that you might not sort of use or be aware of, but you can actually override on per panel basis what time range that panel is going to use. So this panel down here is actually using the dashboard time range. So if I change to last 3 hours or something, this panel is going to change. But the other, when I zoom in, all the panels match that time range. But if I just specify last hour there, this panel is using last hour, but the other panels are using a specific time range for that panel. Last 10 minutes, last 6 hours. And this is something that you specify in a time range tab. You can sort of specify either a time shift or a relative time or both. And another thing that I want to show in this dashboard is some effects that query aggregation can have. So in this single stat panel, we have we show we want to show the total of sort of payments done in the last 6 hours. But you might notice so that the total is quite isn't that much higher than the total for payments in the last 10 minutes. So something looks wrong. And one of the reasons here is that we're only requesting 100 data points from Graphite in this case. But it could be true for, the same issue is going to arise for other data sources as well. We're only requesting 100 data points, and that's just for, because we want to get the background graph. But we want to show the total as a single stat. But so there's going to be some aggregation done by Graphite in this case, and that is kind of hidden in Graphite at least. It's more prevalent in the other time series databases where you explicitly have to maybe specify a query aggregation. But in Graphite, you have to add a consolidate by function to change the default consolidation function, which is average. So if I change this to sum, it will now sort of show a correct total. And this is more apparent if you use the legend and the legend values in Grafana. So in this graph, I'm showing you sort of min, max, and average, and total. And this is something that kind of makes me upset sometimes when I see screenshots of Grafana and you have sort of min and max and average at the same time in the legend. Because due to some limitations in almost no time series database supports returning average, min, and max for the time range per series. So Grafana is calculating the min and max and average and total. And that is done after the query is sort of going through downsampling and aggregation in the time series database. Because if you return raw data, this is looking at the last hour, So this is fine. If you look at last 5 minutes data, you're not going to have any data at all. But if you look at the last hour, that might not be that much aggregation. But if you look at like the last 7 days or something, there's going to be a ton of aggregation done in the time series database. And min and max cannot be accurate at the same time. So I just sort of want you to think about this, that if you have a legend, you have to pick either min and max or average or total. They cannot be accurate at the same time. And you have to also sort of, if you want to have max in the legend, you might want to have also max as the aggregation function. Something to think about. Elasticsearch is actually the only one that I know of where you can actually do a group by time and get sort of min, max, and average for the whole time range as well in a single query. Okay, moving on. Templating. So this is sort of a core Grafana feature that is one of the sort of fundamental things that make dashboards more generic, so you don't have to create a dashboard per server, per application. You can just sort of create these variables. And these variables are something that, there are different types of variables. The main one is called a query variable, and all the values, options in this variable is sort of queried from the time series database. So if you add a new application, if you add a new metric, it will appear in this selection. So if you add a new application, it will show up here. If you spin up a new server, it will show up here. And these variables is then something that you can use in your metric query. You can use them in graph titles. You can use them almost everywhere. And that allows you to build very sort of reusable and generic dashboard. And another thing that you can do with if you have a variable is that you can also specify that this panel, instead of just sort of, I have two servers now selected, instead of just showing both in the same graph, you can say, okay, well, I'm going to split out this panel per each value in this server variable. And maybe I want sort of to have that at span 4. So if I select now all the backend servers, I get 4 panels instead. And if I also select the fixed site, I get the panels for the web servers as well. So that's sort of super useful for creating more dynamic and reusable dashboards. Let's see, ignore. Another template variable is the interval variable. So if you go into templating, you can specify that instead of a query variable, this is just an interval, and you can specify different types of ranges, like 1 minute, 10 minutes. You can also have an auto option that adapts to the time range. You just specify I want sort of 10, I want to split up the time range into 10 steps, something, no matter what the time range is. But this allows you to sort of change the granularity of the data you're looking at. So if you want to sort of look at the data in its raw form or it's in very sort of granular form, you can do that. And then very quickly sort of change. I want to look at sort of just day totals, and you can do that without sort of having to go into the panels and change a group by time or something. So let's see, moving on. This is a new feature that we released in 3.1, which I'm really excited about. It's or was a top requested feature for a long time, and that's the ability to quickly change which data source a dashboard is targeting. So if you have multiple Graphite clusters or multiple Prometheus servers, like that is usually the case, instead of just having to go into each panel and specify the data source, you can now create a data source variable where there's a new type called data source, and you just have to specify which type of data source this variable should be, and it will automatically fill in sort of all your data sources of that type. So if I add a new Graphite server for a new environment, say, that's going to appear here. And for the panels, you just, instead of specifying a data source, you just specify that variable. and it works as you expect. So let's see, moving on. This is just want to showcase how you can mix and match different types of data, and just also that sort of the thing I showed you about the template variables and templating and stuff, that works with any data source. So in this case, I'm using Elasticsearch, and this is a query variable that sort of will query Elasticsearch for what values exist for the host name field. So it's a terms query in Elasticsearch. So if you sort of write new log entries with new host names, that host name is going to appear here as well. And if I select sort of a couple of servers, this graph is going to change. And the templating system is very sort of smart in that this variable is used in this Lucene query, and when that variable is interpolated, it will sort of know, okay, I need to interpolate this in a Lucene context and generate a sort of a Lucene query for each variable selected, or each value. The thing that is interesting here is if you want to combine data from different types of data sources. So let's say I switch to a mixed data source. The mixed data source allows you to add queries of different data source types. So in this case, I have an Elasticsearch, and I maybe want to visualize the logs or something from Elasticsearch alongside CPU or login data from Graphite. And that's sort of something that is super easy to do with this mixed data source. You can just add a query from any data source, any number of them, and they will all be sort of rendered on the same graph, which is kind of neat. So let's see. Moving on. Annotations. Annotations is a way for you to sort of add log data and event data to your graphs. You can't sort of create new events like this from within Grafana. That's something we definitely want to do. So you can sort of maybe add a comment or mark a region and annotate that from within Grafana. But right now, you set up these annotations. Annotations can come from any source. It can come from Graphite, Elasticsearch, InfluxDB, Prometheus, OpenTSDB. And recently in 3.1, they become a little bit more powerful in that you can put more information in them. You can now actually hover over the actual annotation, and you can have links. And yeah, that sort of might direct you to an outage ticket or something. So that's pretty neat. Moving on. Grafana is not only about graphs. There are multiple sort of different panel types. This is the table panel, which allows you to visualize time series in a tabular format, but also allows you to sort of look at raw log data from Elasticsearch or other data sources that support that. There are different types of panels as well available on Grafana.net. I'm going to showcase that a little bit later on. But the table panel is a core panel included in Grafana. And speaking of Grafana.net, that's the next point on this slide, or next dashboard in this demo. And this is something that we very recently launched, the ability to share dashboards on let's see if we have an internet. Maybe not. Let's try to open one. Yes. Okay, so this is something we recently launched, and I'm super excited about this. And I will, almost for the first time, allow an open source community to collaborate and share their expertise in Carbon or in Cassandra or in MongoDB. This is the ultimate MongoDB dashboard showing all the core metrics. And you can instead of spending hours and hours of figuring out what the core metrics are, you can just download a dashboard from here and be up and running in Grafana in very short period of time. So just to show this off, I can sort of copy and paste this URL for this collectee dashboard, head back to Grafana and go into the import screen and just paste that URL. And this is the new part. So when you export a dashboard, it now includes a lot more information about which data sources were used, what type were they. You can also add sort of hidden variables that you can use as a metric prefix, which is super useful for Graphite. So in this case, it's a collectee dashboard. I can sort of pick the Graphite server I want to target, and if I change to have a custom collectee prefix, I can specify that here. Save and open, and I have a now a ready-made collectee dashboard for host metrics. And I added and super easy to publish on Grafana.net. I also did one for Memcached and Nginx. So if you think you have an awesome dashboard, please share that on Grafana.net. So let's see. What more do we have? Dashboard sharing. It's alive. So what you're seeing here is a new feature in Grafana that allows a data source to push data to the panel, and not only sort of the panel to request data from the data source sort of API and the data source abstraction within Grafana. So this is just using a fake sort of data source to showcase the feature. The only real data source that is using this feature is the Snap app or Snap data source. Snap is the sort of collector agent that Intel is working on, open source. It has an HTTP API that allows Grafana to connect to it and stream metrics directly to Grafana. And that data source is using this feature where the data source can sort of continuously push new data to the panel, which is something we will use more in the future. I think I have started working on, but not completed, a WebSocket data source for Grafana where you can sort of push live data to panels and graphs. So, plugins. Yeah, this was the main feature, or the most of the work in 3.0 went into sort of overhauling the plugin system and making it more feature-rich and robust and future-proof. And we also added new types of plugins. So we can now install very easily panel plugins and data sources and apps. And apps is like a collection of different plugins. So an app can contain other data source plugins, panels, and dashboards, and also custom pages. So you see, you have this our World Ping plugin installed. So can go to apps. You can see I have 4 apps installed. You can see there's an update available for the Zabbix one. World Ping is an app, and an app can have custom pages. And a custom page can have sub-pages as well. And now I just want to navigate to one of the World Ping dashboards. And if you attended our party yesterday, we had this sort of pool recording app that we just threw together in a couple of minutes to record all the trick shots and or how much you failed. It's super easy to build either a new panel or a data source and a whole app. Maybe the documentation can be better, but there's tons of examples out right now. So if I head back to Grafana.net, check out the plugin list there. It's just a ton of plugins, and all of them are open source. If you want to look at sort of how they were implemented, you can do that. So let's look at where I'm at. Okay, so and just one thing that I forgot to mention about plugins is that, I mean, we have also new in Grafana 3.0 is a CLI tool that makes it super easy to install plugins and update them. Just sort of Grafana CLI, plugins install, plugins update, plugins list. So that's interesting. alerting. So this is something that is not going to be included in 3.1, but it's going to be merged to master after 3.1 is released. So it's something we've been working on for a very long time, and it's starting to come together, and you just need to mature a little bit more, but we're very close to merging it to master, and it's going to be included in the release we do in maybe late August or September. So the idea here is that you can sort of create pick any query from within the metrics tab, and also then set thresholds. We're starting quite simple with sort of static thresholds, and just you can pick what kind of aggregation you want, and for sort of how long the time window should be for sort of evaluating this alert. We'll learn a lot during the conference as well, get good ideas for how to extend the alert definition here to include sort of a markdown template where you can specify links to other dashboards and sections that should be included in every alert, like sort of what's the customer facing impact. And also maybe more history, sort of what's the previous values for thresholds? Have they been changed recently? That was also a really good idea. Anyway, we're making progress on alerting. So, one more thing. Here's a funny thing that we saw yesterday. Someone's added a new data source that they want to publish on Grafana.net, which allows you to, it's a sun and moon data source that has a lot of data of the sun position and the moon position, which, yeah, sounds kind of interesting or strange. Why would you need that? But when you add this sun and moon data source, you specify your longitude and latitude position. This is the position for Portland. And with that, you can sort of get graphs for sun altitude, moon luminosity, and you can also get annotations for sunrise and sunsets. So this might seem kind of useless, but then you might not be a vampire or a werewolf, where this can be really helpful. So with that, I will turn to questions.
Just for log scale for time so that we can see trends in different durations.
Log scale for?
Time.
So,
Monthly, weekly, and daily on one panel.
okay. Yeah. Well, that's an interesting idea. I haven't seen that before. Is there any example? Sort of.
I guess another way to ask it is, what do you think is the best way to show trends at different time scales for a measure?
Okay. Well, I mean, the best thing I can think of now is have multiple panels with different time ranges on them. So, like the dashboard I had here, so showing logins last 10 minutes, last 6 hours, last day. You could do that sort of with day, month, week, year. So that's the thing I can think of right now.
How are alerts delivered to the recipients? What is it integrated with?
So the idea we have right now is, so with the alert you specify notification groups, and a notification group, I mean, like it could be sort of ops or it could be, and you can have multiple of these, and the notification group can specify that we want warnings to Slack channel, we want errors to PagerDuty, and so a notification group can act as a relay and routing sort of system for multiple sort of endpoints. Any more questions? Yes?
So the storage of all the graph settings and stuff like that, what's the story for high availability of Grafana being something you actually have to have on the back end?
Yes, so I mean the high availability story for Grafana, I mean there's a backend written in Go, and you can cluster it. I mean you have to use MySQL or Postgres as the main database for the main database and also for sessions. if you want to, or you can use sticky sessions for the load balancer. For the learning scheduler and execution sort of system, we plan to sort of have that sort of be aware through of the other Grafana servers and be able to split up workload and take over workload if you have sort of multiple Grafana in a cluster. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you all.